Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock, what we can expect moving forward. And again, don't forget, this is going to be a short week. The market tomorrow is pretty much a half day. It's closed at, I believe 1 p.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. And Wednesday is completely closed. So again, pretty much tomorrow's off if you really think about it. And really, we just have Thursday and Friday. So let's go over regardless, go over my thoughts, talk about what I personally think can happen moving forward for the week and potentially for the month. So if you enjoy, please don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, etc., I do share my thoughts pretty much every single day. The market is open mainly on Tesla stock for just the $3 a month tier. The link is down below in the description of the video. Sometimes I'll share bonus stocks. Like today, for instance, I shared Walmart. Walmart, is looking kind of good here. It's looking pretty good. Anyway, nonetheless, shared Walmart in the morning as well. Boring stock, but hey, sometimes you need boring stocks in your portfolio as well. But or for $5 a month, you get access to everything I just said, plus NVIDIA daily updates. But jumping into a Tesla with a nice day, actually closing up about 2.5%, which compared to the market, you can argue is a very slight outperformance, closing at $431 per share pretty much, right? So what does this mean moving forward, right? Is this bullish or is it bearish? Well, obviously, as usual, there's mixed signs, right? There's always mixed signs. But honestly, again, if I had to just look at one thing and just really not overcomplicate things, you can pretty much, honestly, you could probably just remove all these indicators here. And really, the only thing that matters is, in my opinion, the sideways levels, which have been respected today. And of course, this rising channel. That's pretty much the only thing you need to know. And honestly, maybe even throw in this cloud. But honestly, those two things I just mentioned, probably all you really need. So I mentioned on last week how, 415 is that level in the sand for me, right? 415 needs to hold. 415 is very important, blah, 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 blah. I kept saying 415, 415, 415. Why 415? Well, it was previous all-time highs. Usually when a stock like this breaks out of previous all-time highs, you want to respect those previous all-time highs, right? Kind of like what Apple did, except Apple honestly didn't even come back down to its previous all-time highs. It just continued going. Tesla, on the other hand, is actually coming back down and retesting those all-time highs really this week right now. It's doing it. You can see back here, right? All-time highs. And then what did we do today? We came pretty much right back into it last week, arguably, and even better this week to retest that. Now, if I go back to the 10-minute chart just to show how close it was, you can see we pretty much went almost pinpoint exactly to 415.44. That was the low of the day. 44 cents away from my, most important level that we need to hold. I actually did enter a position, not exactly at 415, of course, I wish, but pretty damn close, not too far away from 415 because the risk reward was way too good. Now the position is not a crazy large position because, I think it's still pretty risky up here, but I couldn't resist. I could not resist. The risk reward was way too good. So moving forward, what do I see happening with Tesla stock? Well, it's pretty simple, guys. It's pretty simple. My main goal in 2025 is to really just simplify the charts, simplify technical analysis in my own process as well. Sometimes I overtrade and I overthink things, right? Just to really simplify things as cleanly as possible. And the most cleanly way possible I can think of this right now is the fact that, we're in this rising channel, right? Plain and simple, we're in this rising channel and we defended 415. Very good news, and we have a nice looking candle closure today. A bit of a doji, but nonetheless, not too bad of a close. So pretty simply put, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla makes its way at least to about $460 per share because that was that previous resistance point. Remember that we had that, breakdown. Remember when I said if we lose 460, I think Tesla will most likely make its way lower. That's exactly what happened. Right? We lost that 460 level on the 1 hour chart and we made our way, lower naturally, right? So wouldn't be surprised if we come back up to, at the very least, retest that 460s, 450s-ish range personally. Honestly, as early as tomorrow or Thursday. And that's where things will get interesting because, there's a chance that we potentially got up to here, reject, and then ultimately we can potentially break down because you have to remember, at some point, we will break down out of this channel. At some point, that will happen, right? It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. We can't just be in this tiny little rising channel for the next 10 years, essentially. At some point, we will break down, and at some point, we will correct, right? That absolutely will happen. You have to be ready for that. Now, will that happen now or not? Nobody knows. But again, there's no reason to guess, right? Because as long as we hold 415 and as long as we hold this channel, you assume the trend is continuing to be up. Or you assume that while we're in this rising channel, we're going to continue rising. There's no reason to assume otherwise until proven otherwise, right? And that's just the way trading usually works, right? You can try to predict things to, maybe be ready just in case things happen or that happens, right? So you're at least ready for it. But in terms of maybe actually truly executing the majority of your trade or majority of your position, you can only deal with what you have presented in front of you. And so far, again, what we have presented in front of us, nice looking doji candle, nice recovery above 415, nice hold, nice test of this bottom trend line of this rising channel, decent looking doji. We're still holding this cloud. We're still closing above the 9 EMA, even though yesterday or on Friday we didn't, but nonetheless, we're still holding above the cloud. The bullish momentum is still there. Now, obviously the warning shots is the fact that the MACD did flip bearish today. And the stochastic is continuing to go into the bearish direction. So you can argue there's a slight little bearish divergence on the stochastic here, a little bit, right? Tiny bit. But nonetheless, again, because these indicators are looking a little bit weak, that's why I'm not like holding my breath, for us to make all the way back up to the opposite side of the channel, which will put us into the 500s, the mid to low 500s. I'm not fully holding my breath for that. At the very least, I'd want to see 460 recapture, right? This was a pretty important level that did resist us before, you can see. So at the very least, I'd want to see 460 recaptured and held. If we can do that, then I can start, more logically thinking about revisiting the upper side of this rising channel that we are in, which again puts us into the mid to low-ish 500s, right? But my main target for the short-ish term, which again could be easily as early as this week, is just a retest back up to somewhere around 460 to 450, something along the lines of that would be my main focus right now moving forward for this week. That's what I'll be looking for, and then I'll probably readjust, maybe take some profit. I'm not sure yet, but something along the lines of that is where I am eyeballing it. Now, again, let's assume that we do fall out. Again, nothing has shown that we're falling out. There's no signal saying that we're going to fall out. There's no top signal, nothing like that whatsoever. Everything still looks pretty good for the bulls, I would argue, right? I would argue the bulls still absolutely have, the upper hand here. No question about that, especially while we're within this rising triangle, while we're getting supported by the cloud. No reason to assume otherwise, and while we're holding 415. Those three things are crucial for the bulls. Those are the three pillars holding the bull thesis up right now. Obviously, knock one of them down, the thesis gets weaker. But let's say it does get weaker, and let's say we do lose the thesis. Let's say we do drop below 415. What's the next step? Well, I've always said this, and I'll continue saying this until, I guess I changed my mind, really. 460. Oh, sorry, 360. 360 is pretty much my target to the downside. If we lose 415 and lose this channel, that will be my target to the downside. That is pretty much where the market bias is sitting. That is where that massive support should be. This is where that area of massive resistance existed before that, we of course broke out of, for this rising triangle setup that, obviously exploded us much higher. And that's really all she wrote. At the end of the day, that's probably the main thing I'll be looking for, right? Tesla would drop all the way down here. That'll be my first main target to the downside. And I'd be pretty surprised if we go much lower than that, because even if we lose this rising channel, even if we get this mini correction down to, let's say, 360 roughly, you have to remember the chart is still bullish. The chart is still very bullish, even if we drop to 360. So just keep that in mind. It'll just be less bullish compared to just holding this rising triangle, but still structurally the chart will be, in my opinion, overall bullish as we're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows nonetheless, even with that drop. Keep that in mind. You have to understand that, right? That is very important to understand. So just keep that in mind. But that's probably my main target to the downside, about 360-ish dollars per share. Worst case scenario would be all the way down here to 260. Now this would be a lot more bearish. This would be a lot more of a steeper correction, and the chart would start looking a little bit more suspicious, to say the least. Let's just say that, right? Because we're no longer making higher highs and higher lows anymore. We are most likely now making lower lows, lower highs. So keep that in mind. That is the worst case scenario. I don't think that's going to happen unless obviously something tells me otherwise. As of right now, I'm not holding my breath for 260, but I would potentially hold my breath for 360. That could be an actual plausible target for the downside move. But again, nothing at the moment, as it stands right now, is suggesting that wants to happen, because remember those three pillars, the EMA cloud, so far so good. 415, so far so good. And of course, the rising channel, so far so good. So again, just very simple, straight to the point, no reason to overcomplicate it. And let's just see how it goes, right? Let's just see how it goes. Keep in mind, right, if I go over here, actually, I want to switch this really quickly here. Give me 1 second. I want to switch this so that it only shows it on the current interval, because I don't want the weekly to be looking this messy. The weekly is a little too messy. And that's the 1 hour. Let me go ahead and I'll talk about the 1 hour very quickly here soon as well. As I go to the weekly here, right? So the weekly, you can see, just cleaner look. You can see nice little breakout over here on, I should say, the all-time highs, right? All-time highs here, nice little breakout of all-time highs on nice volume for the most part. And then, of course, obviously we had a hideous looking weekly candle last week. That is a concern for sure. But as long as we hold 415, I think things are good. Now, again, if we do lose 415, we most likely will sell off pretty quickly to 360. That would make the chart still bullish, but, obviously less bullish in my opinion. Less of, of a parabolic move to the upside in my opinion as well, but still bullish overall. But the ideal, truly the most bullish scenario is just continuing to hold 415, and especially that rising channel. That to me is like the true bull case. So watch for that moving forward, right? Because again, breaking above all-time highs and then holding them on a retest, very powerful stuff. So let's see how it plays out, and let's see how this chart continues to unfold. Keep in mind, I will obviously, preface this sort of, the chart is still overbought. The weekly chart is still extremely overbought. We're bringing out the Bollinger Bands. where the weekly is still pretty much at the top of the Bollinger Bands, right? That doesn't happen very often, doesn't stay like that very often. So there is still this risk that, and that's why my position is a little bit on the lighter end, that we are still very, very elevated. Despite the levels are still good, despite there's no actual true warning signs, we are still playing in very elevated territory here, right? Very elevated territory without that actually overall much pullback, without that much of a breather, right? We're still, running this marathon, in sprint fashion, if that makes sense, right? Without taking a break, essentially, is what I'm trying to say, right? There has been no break. So it's, to me, just a matter of, how much more can the stock continue sprinting at this speed before needing a break? That's kind of my main question up here. So far, it seems like we're still good to go. But, if there is something to watch out for, there is some, caution in the back of my mind. It absolutely would be the fact that, again, we are pretty much still sprinting in a marathon without hardly any break. That's probably the best example I can, use, right? If you bring up, regardless of which band you bring up, where on the weekly, both of them are, quite overbought. Again, overbought doesn't mean it's a top signal. It just means, hey, be a little bit careful up here, right? Again, like I said, no breaks. We're just sprinting very aggressively here. Could continue sprinting, but at some point the sprinting will most likely end, and there's a chance that the stock collapses, gasping for air for a bit, right? You have to understand that usually does happen, but so far not showing signs for that. Thought I'd mention it regardless. Now, taking a quick look at options flow. Let's take a quick look at options flow and see what exactly is happening with Tesla stock. Definitely a little bit of a more muted day, in my opinion, right? Nice calls coming in over here, right? 2027 leaps for about 7 million almost. You can say 680 strike, but they're 2027 leaps. We don't care about leaps here because that doesn't mean anything for us, right? I mean, we all know long term it's probably fine. Just short term is the question, right? So what is short term saying? Well, we have a January 17, 2025 500 call that came in when Tesla was at 420. That's pretty good. You don't know when they took profit. You had a bunch over here come in for a 770 strike. You can see here for 516 2025. Not too bad at all. So the bulls are definitely trying to step in here. I wouldn't say it's overwhelmingly bullish on the options flow, but they're definitely stepping in here, right? That's, no question about that. And Black Box is actually showing a 42 million confirmed bearish flow. So a little bit of a mixed signal there for me in the options flow. So let's see which one actually plays out. But again, I usually trade off of just strictly the chart. I trade mainly off the chart. Options flow is like 5% of, what I factor into my overall, thesis, if you will. The chart still looks good. The chart looks good until we lose pretty much the channel /415 / that EMA cloud. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.